The crisp autumn air carried the scent of hay and damp earth as the grand estate buzzed with excitement. Men in tailored suits and polished boots stood in groups, murmuring amongst themselves as they assessed the horses being led into the auction ring. The annual Harrington Horse Auction was an event of prestige, where only the wealthiest buyers gathered to claim the finest breeds money could buy. Beneath the grandeur of the occasion, a young stable hand lingered near the wooden railings, his fingers curling around the rough edges as he watched the proceedings with quiet intensity. Liam had spent years tending to horses that would never bear his name. He knew each movement, each flick of an ear, each breath of the magnificent creatures that passed through these auctions, yet he was always on the sidelines, a silent observer in a world where wealth dictated worth. He clenched his fists in his coat pockets, his heart hammering as the next horse was led into the ring. Stormfire. The stallion was unlike the others that had been paraded before the eager bidders. His chestnut coat shimmered under the lanterns, a rich burnished gold that spoke of untapped strength. His mane, streaked with pale strands, cascaded over his proud neck, but his eyes were wild, filled with unbridled defiance. He reared slightly, jerking against the lead rope as the handler struggled to keep him steady. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Too much spirit," someone muttered. "Untrainable," another scoffed. At the front of the auction floor, standing with an air of authority, was Mr. Charles Harrington. Dressed in an immaculate coat, his presence commanded attention, his eyes gleaming with superiority as he assessed the stallion. With a slow, deliberate gesture, he lifted his hand, signaling his interest. A hush fell over the crowd. If Harrington was bidding, it meant the horse had value. Whispers spread like wildfire as anticipation crackled in the air. But just as the auctioneer began his pitch, the stallion gave a sudden, violent thrash, knocking the handler off balance. The murmurs turned to laughter as Stormfire yanked free, his powerful hooves slamming into the dirt. He was a tempest in a cage, unwilling to be tamed. Harrington's expression darkened. The momentary flicker of interest faded into irritation as he shook his head dismissively. "Not worth the trouble," he said coldly. "A horse like that has no place in my stables." Laughter erupted once more as other buyers followed suit, shaking their heads and turning away. No one wanted a horse that couldn't be controlled. The auctioneer hesitated before dropping the price drastically, his voice strained with the effort of salvaging the sale. Liam's pulse quickened. His entire life had been spent tending to horses for men like Harrington, men who saw creatures like Stormfire as nothing more than commodities. But Liam saw something else. He saw the fire in the stallion's eyes, the raw pain beneath the defiance. Stormfire wasn't broken, he was misunderstood. Before he could think twice, Liam stepped forward. "I'll take him." The words left his lips with an urgency that startled even him. The laughter around him faltered, replaced by amused disbelief. The auctioneer blinked, momentarily unsure if he had heard correctly. A sneer curled at the edge of Harrington's mouth. "You," he let out a low chuckle. "A stable boy buying a horse? What do you plan to pay with, lad? Your day's wages." More laughter followed, but Liam held his ground. His fingers tightened around the few crumpled bills he had saved over the years, barely enough for scraps compared to the wealth that surrounded him. The auctioneer hesitated before shrugging. "Sold," he declared, to the young man with more courage than sense. A final ripple of chuckles and shaking heads followed as the crowd dispersed. Liam barely heard them. His breath hitched as he stepped forward, meeting Stormfire's wary gaze. The stallion stood tense, nostrils flaring, muscles coiled as if ready to flee. Gently, cautiously, Liam reached for the lead rope. The moment his fingers brushed against it, Stormfire jerked back, eyes flashing with distrust. "I won't hurt you," Liam murmured, his voice low and steady. The horse remained rigid, but he didn't pull away again. Liam let out a slow breath, carefully guiding him away from the auction ring, his heart pounding in time with the rhythmic clatter of hooves on stone. The journey back to the modest stable he called home was quiet, save for the occasional snort from Stormfire and the distant rustling of trees. The sky had deepened into hues of amber and violet by the time Liam led the stallion into the small enclosure. The stable wasn't much, Not compared to the lavish facilities of Harrington's estate, but it was safe. It was home. Stormfire resisted every step. He refused to be tethered, refused to be brushed, refused to acknowledge Liam's presence beyond assessing him as a potential threat. But Liam was patient. He didn't push, didn't demand obedience. Instead, he simply sat on the edge of the stall, watching, waiting. Old Ben, the grizzled horse trainer, who had taught Liam everything he knew, leaned against the wooden post nearby, arms crossed as he observed. "You've got your work cut out for you," he said after a long moment. Liam exhaled, glancing toward Stormfire, who stood rigid, eyes darting between them. "I know." Ben studied him, then gave a slow nod. "You remind me of myself at your age. Stubborn, reckless." His gaze shifted toward the stallion. "That horse ain't just wild, boy. He's been hurt. You see it, don't you?" Liam did. Beneath the muscle, beneath the raw power, there was pain. Scars, not just physical but deep within, reflected in the way Stormfire flinched at sudden movements, the way he lashed out not just in defiance, but in fear. "Someone tried to break him," Liam said quietly, "and they failed." Ben grunted. "Breaking ain't the way, never was. Some men think force is the only way to tame a beast. But trust," he tapped a calloused finger to his temple, "trust is harder to earn than obedience." Liam absorbed the words, his resolve hardening. He wouldn't break Stormfire. He would earn him. As the night deepened, Liam remained by the stall, refusing to leave. He spoke softly, his voice steady, recounting stories of his childhood, of his struggles, of the feeling of being unwanted. He didn't know if Stormfire understood, but the stallion's ears twitched, his breathing evening out ever so slightly. Then, in a moment so subtle Liam almost missed it, Stormfire took a step closer. It wasn't much, barely a fraction of trust, but it was a start. Liam smiled. For the first time since the auction, the laughter of the wealthy men faded from his mind. They had seen a worthless horse. He saw something else. He saw a champion waiting to rise, and he would be the one to prove it. The days stretched into weeks, marked by patience, persistence, and the slow unraveling of fear. Liam spent every moment he could with Stormfire, moving carefully, speaking softly, letting the stallion dictate the pace. He didn't force him to wear a saddle, didn't pull at the reins, didn't push him beyond what he could handle. Instead, he allowed the bond to form, brick by brick, through trust rather than control. At first, Stormfire remained distant, his eyes flickering with suspicion at every small movement. He would pin his ears back when Liam approached, snorting warily, his muscles tensing as if expecting a blow. Liam never gave him one. He came armed only with patience. He sat by the stall at night, his voice a steady murmur in the quiet. He let the stallion see him not as another master, but as something else entirely, something Stormfire had perhaps never known. A friend. One evening, as the sky bled into soft purples and golds, Liam stood just outside the paddock, a lead rope in his hands. He didn't move forward. He didn't command. He simply waited. Stormfire pawed at the dirt, his ears flicking forward, then back. It was a test, a silent battle of wills. The stallion's instinct urged him to flee, to resist, to remain untamed. But something deeper, something fragile and uncertain, kept him rooted to the ground. Then, in a moment so subtle Liam almost missed it, Stormfire took a step forward. Just one. A small, hesitant movement, but it was enough. Liam didn't reach for him. He only nodded, offering a quiet smile. "That's it," he murmured. "That's all we need for today." Ben watched from the porch, arms crossed over his chest, a knowing smirk pulling at his weathered face. "He's testing you, boy, seeing if you're worth his trust." Liam exhaled, nodding. "And I'll prove that I am." The progress was slow, but it was real. Each day, Stormfire allowed Liam a little closer. First, he let him touch his muzzle, then his neck. Then, finally, Liam was able to run a brush through his thick mane without the stallion jerking away. The first time Stormfire accepted a saddle, he stood rigid, his nostrils flaring, his hooves shifting uneasily. Liam didn't mount him. He just let the weight sit there. Let Stormfire realize that he was in control, that nothing would be forced upon him. Only when Stormfire no longer stiffened beneath the saddle did Liam attempt to climb onto his back. The first time, the stallion nearly bucked him straight into the dirt. Liam landed hard. The breath knocked from his lungs, but he didn't react with anger. He only stood, brushed himself off, and tried again, and again, and again, until, finally, Stormfire didn't fight. The first ride was tentative, unsteady. Liam let the stallion dictate the pace, his fingers loose on the reins, his voice a gentle reassurance in the crisp morning air. Stormfire moved cautiously, each step measured, his body tense with the weight of old wounds. But he did not throw Liam off. He did not run. He did not fight. Instead, for the first time, he listened. Ben whistled low from the fence, shaking his head in admiration. "I'll be damned," he muttered. "You've got yourself a horse now." Liam barely heard him. He was too focused, his hand steady as he guided Stormfire in slow, careful circles around the paddock. The stallion's muscles quivered beneath him, but there was something new in his stance. Not defiance, not fear. Trust. It was the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet, but it would not go unnoticed. Word traveled fast, even in the quiet countryside. It wasn't long before whispers of the untamable horse and the stable boy who had done the impossible began reaching places Liam wished they wouldn't. One afternoon, as he led Stormfire through his usual exercises, a figure approached from the road. Liam knew who it was before he even turned around. Charles Harrington stood at the entrance to the paddock, his hands folded behind his back, his eyes sharp beneath the brim of his hat. He was dressed impeccably, as always, his coat without a single wrinkle, his polished boots free of dust. A man who had never once dirtied his hands with the work of training a horse, yet considered himself above those who had. Liam's jaw tightened, his grip on the reins firm as Stormfire shifted beside him. The stallion recognized the man, his ears flattening, his nostrils flaring. He remembered. "Well, well," Harrington drawled, his voice oozing with amusement. "I must admit, I never expected to see this horse again, let alone see him broken in." Liam stiffened. "He's not broken," he said evenly. "He's trained." Harrington chuckled, the sound low and condescending. "Semantics, boy. A horse like that is only as valuable as the control you have over him. And from what I see, you've done a fine job." Liam said nothing, his body taut with unease. Harrington's gaze flickered to Stormfire, assessing, calculating. Then, with the smooth confidence of a man who believed the world bent to his will, he reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a slip of paper. "A check. I'll buy him back," he said, his tone casual, as if it were a mere formality. "Name your price." The word sent a chill down Liam's spine. Stormfire shifted restlessly beside him, his hooves pawing at the ground. The stallion could sense the tension, the unspoken battle waging between the two men. Liam exhaled slowly, forcing himself to remain steady. "He's not for sale." Harrington's expression didn't change. "Everything has a price." "Not this," Liam said firmly. There was a beat of silence. Then Harrington laughed, shaking his head. "You're an ambitious one. I'll give you that. But let's not play games. You can't afford to keep a horse like this. You barely had the money to buy him in the first place." Liam's throat tightened. He knew what Harrington was doing, knew he was prodding at the truth that Liam had no wealth, no security, nothing beyond the worn-down stable and the fading generosity of old Ben. But that didn't matter. "He stays with me," Liam said, his voice unwavering. Harrington studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he tore the check in half and let the pieces fall to the ground. "Very well," he said, his tone still smooth, still arrogant. "But don't be foolish, boy. That horse will never be anything more than what he is now. And when the weight of that reality settles, you'll come looking for me." With that, he turned on his heel and strode back toward his carriage, leaving Liam standing in the dust, his heart pounding. Stormfire exhaled sharply beside him, shaking his mane as if dismissing the encounter. Liam reached out, running a steadying hand along the stallion's neck. "We'll prove him wrong," he murmured. "I swear it." The wind carried his words into the fading sunlight, a promise sealed in the quiet understanding between man and beast. They were not finished. Not yet. The tension in the air was thick as Liam tightened the straps on Stormfire's saddle, his hands steady despite the storm raging inside him. The news had spread beyond their small town, whispers of a once-rejected stallion, now transformed into something extraordinary. It was no surprise when Harrington returned, this time without pretense, his eyes gleaming with the sharp hunger of a man who refused to be outplayed. Liam had expected him. The event was grander than anything he'd ever witnessed. The annual Derby Showcase, a stage reserved for only the finest bloodlines, the most well-trained champions. It was a place for prestige, not for stable boys or discarded horses. And yet, here they were. Ben had grumbled about it at first, muttering that Liam had nothing to prove to a man like Harrington. But in the end, even the old rancher had seen the truth. This wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the world, and more importantly, Stormfire himself, that he was never meant to be discarded. The crowds pressed against the fences, their eager murmurs blending with the rhythmic clatter of hooves on packed dirt. Liam led Stormfire toward the paddock, the stallion moving with controlled power, his coat gleaming under the afternoon sun. He wasn't the same wild-eyed creature that had been cast aside at auction. He was something else now, something greater. And Harrington saw it, too. Dressed in his signature-tailored coat, he stood near the judge's stand, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But Liam didn't miss the flicker of recognition in his eyes, the brief tightening of his jaw. Ah, there's the boy with his charity case, Harrington mused as Liam passed. I hope you enjoy the show. Though I'd hate for your pet to embarrass himself in front of all these people. Liam didn't slow. He didn't bite back. Words were just words. He knew the truth, and soon, so would everyone else. The starting bell rang. The competition was brutal, a gauntlet of hybrid stallions and their seasoned riders, each one commanding an animal sculpted for performance. Stormfire was different. He wasn't raised for this, hadn't been bred with careful lineage. But what he lacked in breeding, he made up for in something far rarer, unbreakable spirit. Liam leaned forward, hands firm but gentle on the reins. You ready, boy? Stormfire snorted, ears flicking back. The course was a test of speed and precision, a winding circuit of hurdles, sharp turns, and breakneck sprints. The first obstacle came fast, a towering jump that would have once sent Stormfire into a panic. But not today. He surged forward, muscles coiling, hooves striking the ground like thunder. They cleared it. The crowd erupted. Obstacle after obstacle fell away beneath them. Stormfire moved with effortless grace, his power raw yet refined, each movement a testament to the trust forged between him and Liam. The other riders pressed hard, but Stormfire was relentless, his speed unmatched, his endurance carrying him further than any of them expected. By the final stretch, only one competitor remained ahead, a sleek, jet-black stallion ridden by one of Harrington's protégés. Liam could feel Stormfire's breath beneath him, steady, powerful, waiting for his cue. Now, he whispered, and Stormfire answered. He surged forward, overtaking the final rider in a burst of untamed speed. The finish line loomed ahead. The roar of the crowd faded into nothing. It was just them now, boy and horse, moving as one. Then they crossed. Victory! The world seemed to pause, the weight of disbelief settling over the stadium before the explosion of cheers shattered it. Liam barely heard any of it, his hands buried in Stormfire's mane, his throat tight with emotion. He looked up. Harrington was gone. But it didn't matter, because Stormfire had never needed his approval. He had won something far greater. Freedom.